It was fake news. That's right, it was not true. Just completely made up, which is a kind of a bummer. Because I low-key wanted this story to be true. Sam Murjovsky here behind the What's Right microphone. Friends, welcome to the What's Right show, powered by Sam and Ash Injury Law. In a crash, call Sam and Ash, 800-304-2000, because you deserve what's right. The rumor, the made-up story, was that Scott Besson had gotten into another alleged fistfight at the office, at the Treasury building. Well, it was all over the internet. It took off like wildfire, and apparently, some back in the day, in the early months of the Trump administration, claimed that there was a physical confrontation between Besant and Elon Musk, and Besant, look, he's a gay man who lives in a pink house, but he's a big, tall guy and has a reputation for being a bit of a brawler, which I love. So I kind of wanted the story to be true. Anyhow, what is true is that Besant is flexing his strength via the U.S. Treasury and putting Iran in a bit of a tight spot. Remember when, at the onset of this crisis, after the 28th of February decapitation strike, wherein most of Iran's leadership was taken out in one day, the Mosaic defense plan went into effect, and all the provinces and their respective IRGC forces began operating independently of central command in the country. And so they, for a period of a few weeks, were firing off missiles willy-nilly. Each of the provinces, each of the local commanders, basically making his own military and strategic decisions. And this resulted in a number of friendly states to Iran getting hit with missiles. Well, those countries haven't forgotten it. And apparently they are now cooperating. They are cooperating with the U.S. government when it comes to bank accounts and other Iranian assets that were held for years securely in these friendly countries. Here was Besant yesterday mentioning this, really epic stuff.
Yesterday, we announced Operation Economic Fury, and we, for over a year, we have had maximum pressure on the Iranians, both on blocking payments into the Iranian state and going after the accounts of the IRGC. One of what may prove to be fatal mistakes that the Iranians made was bombing their GCC neighbors, and who are now willing to be much more transparent in terms of the funds, or do a deeper dive in investigating the funds that are held within their banking systems.
Yeah, there we go. So easy stuff, right? They're saying, hey, we got some money over here. Hey, we've got some Iranian funds. Hey, we're holding these bank accounts. And it comes exactly the same day that the blockade is coming into full effect, right? Began on Monday morning, our time. And now if you are a ship attempting to enter the harbor, through the Strait of Hormuz and attempt to go port in Iran, you're going to hear a message from the U.S. Navy, which will sound something like this.
The U.S. has announced a formal blockade of Iranian ports and coastal areas. This is illegal action. All vessels are advised to immediately return to port if leaving, and discontinue transit to Iran if that is your next port of call. Do not attempt to breach the blockade. Vessels will be boarded for interdiction and seizure, transiting to or from an Iranian port. Turn around and prepare to be boarded. If you do not comply with this blockade, we will use force. The whole of the United States Navy is ready to force compliance.
You know, it was, I suppose, was always a miscalculation on the part of Iran to play with the port of Strait of Hormuz. For all the same reasons that everybody criticized Trump and said, look, it was so easy for the Iranians to use this choke point to squeeze international oil supply, shipping, etc., out of the waters there out of the strait is actually precisely the reason why it's so easy for the U.S. Navy to close it. What is it, 21, 22 miles across in its most narrow point? For the world's largest navy, that is easy peasy, all right? And they don't have to go patrol inside past the Strait of Hormuz. They don't have to go in. They literally can block every ship entering. And if that ship is headed to Iran, be turned around, or worse. So this is the state of it. And when you combine this with the frantic phone calls and conversations apparently happening now among top leadership in the country, in Iran, fretting about money. We think about a lot of components here. We think about freedoms. We think about weapons. We think about bombs. We think about nuclear enrichment. But a country once flush with cash, a country whose own fortunes soared as, one, they were given billions by the Biden administration, previously to that, the Obama people, but also whose oil supply went up in value as Russian oil began facing sanctions as well in the wake of the conflict in Ukraine. So all of this is interesting to watch. They're freaking out about money, and money is a choke point. If they can't pay their security forces, it all comes apart. I was reading somewhere that a number of these checkpoints, the Bazish checkpoints and various police checkpoints across the country are staffed not by Iranians anymore, that they have imported folks from Iraq and even Afghanistan as mercenaries, right? So these people are not there for ideological purposes or reasons, motivations. Rather, they're there because they're getting paid. You take away their ability to pay, I mean, it's out the window. So, interesting development there. By the way, things are definitely shape-shifting out in the California race for governor. Swalwell continues to be in deep water. What did we learn since yesterday? Well, I'll tell you one thing that is important. It seems that there are now multiple police agencies that are investigating rape allegations against Congressman Swalwell. And one of the things that came out in it too is that the accusations by the woman whose press conference and statement we played on air yesterday seem to be corroborated with some financial disclosures from the campaign. So the hotel where she claims to have been attacked, there is a record of a campaign event occurring there. There is a record of a room being paid for by the campaign. Of course, this is further acid reflux for Democrats because it turns out that her alleged rape was likely paid for by the campaign and by donors supporting Eric Swalwell. All this very sordid. And in the background of this is a bit of I think, a tectonic, or the beginnings of a tectonic shift in the race for governor. Because with Swalwell dropping out, or saying he's suspending his campaign, with him being taken out with all these allegations, I still maintain these allegations are not new. They were certainly well known to party insiders, not just prominent supporters of Swalwell's, but obviously also folks high up in the Democratic Party. This was all something that was certainly on people's radars. Remember, Swalwell had run for president in 2020 in the primary against Joe Biden and others. A lot of vetting that happens in those races. So the idea that this wasn't known to me is just is ludicrous. Now, okay. So where are we at with this? Well, let me tell you. The Tom Steyer was the immediate beneficiary of we'll call it the Swalwell boost, right? Swalwell dropping out, that because Swalwell is the leading candidate. He had the highest percentage of support of any of the Democrats running. So he became the target painted a big, giant target on his back. Swalwell gets taken out, and up along comes Tom Steyer. And Tom Steyer is a billionaire. He is an absolute left-wing fanatic. He is a defund ICE, defund the police radical. And you know what's crazy is that they've got this Matt Mann guy who really was not on my radar. He was polling at 1, 2, maybe 3% at the onset of this, or at least at the time that even as recently as last week, before the heavy parts of the Swalwell allegations came out. And Mann is a mayor of San Jose. So he's a Bay Area Democrat, but he is known for being more, shall we say, pragmatic. He's known for being more, let's say, he's tough on crime. He doesn't adopt the Democrat positions on that. What else can I tell you about him? He's very polished, professional looking. When he talks, he doesn't say very much. Right? So there's not a lot of there. And he's getting pumped up by a number of prominent Democrat accounts and influencers and the like, which tells me he's got a pretty decent ground game when it comes to grassroots Democratic politics, certainly in the state of California. Here's Mann doing an interview, and I just look. I mean, I listened to this. I saw this when it happened, and my take was almost that he basically doesn't say anything. This was yesterday. MS Now, Morning Joe, right? Talk about a high-profile Democratic show. And this is the mayor of San Jose.
We have to prove that California's values work in practice. And I'm proud to say, as mayor of San Jose, I've led us to reduce crime, become the safest big city in the country, solve 100% of homicides. To your point about retail theft, I was the first Democrat in the state to come out for Prop 36 and say there must be accountability for organized retail theft. And you've got to be able to mandate treatment if someone's addiction is causing them to harm the broader community. We've reduced homelessness by 1/3 in just the last 4 years. We've removed barriers to home building. We're growing again. People are building housing in San Jose. That's the kind of resistance we need. The best resistance to this MAGA movement that's divisive, reckless, tearing families apart is to demonstrate results, to get California back to being California, being a land of opportunity, an aspirational place. Only the Democratic Party can do that for this state, but we can't do it with more of the same politicians.
Robbie, when you listen to politicians talk like this, do your eyes glaze over? I almost hesitated playing this, folks, today because I didn't want to lose any of you to sheer boredom. It's like this beautifully sounding, sing-songy, back and forth, monotone, drivel nonsense, white noise. This is the elevator music of political speeches. And the problem is that out in California, the guy looks good, I'll tell you that. He's got a polished look, he's the right age, salt and pepper hair, got the right amount of experience in his look and his visage. But is there anything beyond that, anything of real substance? And the short answer is, I don't think so. But can a guy like this win? And the answer is absolutely. Because California is still, on the best day for Republicans, almost 2/3 Democrat. That's a big majority. Now, I've got to presume that Hilton, Steve Hilton, the more, I think, auspicious of the two Republicans running, is going to make it to the general election. I mean, I don't foresee him not getting there. Of course, June is coming up, but the primaries are here soon. But I just see Steve getting it. And then the question is, who's the Democrat that comes in? Steyer, for his part, the crazy billionaire leftist nut job, has spent something like $89 million so far on his rate. Do you know what that is? I mean, I know you know what $89 million is, but do you know what this is? Just like astronomical, even in a state like California, to spend this kind of money. Well, to give you an idea, it was about $1 million or $2 million to run for Congress. Maybe all in, right? Primary in general. It used to be, even in a populous state like California, 10 or 15, maybe 25 million for a state run. 89 million. Now, he's got his own money. I presume he's funding it himself. Not very many self-funded billionaires get across the finish line, particularly not when they are as dry and milquetoast and just obnoxiously not there as this guy. So, what was that? Robbie's in my ear. He spent. That's right. Steyer and Swalwell have at least one thing in common. No, it's not the rape thing. They that we know of. They both ran for president in 2020. They ran in the Democratic primary against each other. And Robbie's reminding me Steyer spent $200 million in that. And he got a pretty good return for his cash, didn't he, Robbie? 0 delegates. He got exactly 0 delegates. He got bupkis, nada, zilch, 0. Well, so it's a vanity play, but it doesn't. Right now, you're going to see a lot of fluidity over the next a week or so, because all that the support is figuring out where they want to go, and they're figuring out where they can win. That's the real thing. Now, there's a wild card here. And she is the former Attorney General of California. Her California bona fides are well established. From that, she went on to be in the Senate. And from there, she became vice president of the United States under Joe Biden. Yes, I mean Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris has publicly said a number of times that she is not ruling out a run for the governorship. Oh, Robbie, how badly do you want her to throw her hat in? I know what her, by the way, I know what the minders, the consultants, if they're worth their salt, what they're telling her, well, there's the ones that want to get paid, right? There's the ones, consultants will always urge you to run if you're the least bit viable or have a brand name. They'll press you to run because they make a ton of money on the campaign. You raise money, they get paid. They don't really care if you win or lose, they make money. But her real advisors that maybe care about her a little bit, at least, are going to tell her that there's not a lot of upside to this. She already has run once for the main event, which is the presidency of the United States of America. And she did that and then of course lost. So, losing in a lower profile race would be, I think, a little bit of a problem for her. So that's the calculus that's gonna go into this. But that's right. She's not even on the ballot, right? She didn't make the cutoff. She hasn't declared. So she would have to be a write-in. It's not going to happen. It's wishful thinking. Although there will be likely a few enthusiastic Democrats in the state of California who will support her. And look at Katie Porter. I don't think that's going anywhere. Villaraigosa mentioned him yesterday. Xavier Becerra, Betty Yee, Tony Thurman. These are a lot of also rans. Matt Mayen's stock is going up, though. Keep an eye on this guy, please. And he is a threat. He's a threat. And is he going to be actually a conservative Democrat? Is he going to do things, differently than Gavin Newsom? No, these Democrats all understand they have to say these things now because to win, they need to moderate. In practice, they rarely do. Sam Murjovsky here on the What's Right Media Network. Back in a moment.
The Salmon Ash team, they wanted me to have the best care. They had my interests at heart. I have an enormous amount of gratitude. I cannot say enough thank you.
Hi, Sam Rajovsky here behind the What's Right microphone, Nevada's favorite recovering Californian, here at your service. As I always tell you at this time in the program, if you get into an accident, if you're injured, if a loved one has been abused, gosh forbid, in a nursing home, anything where an injury has occurred, get some advice. Talk to a lawyer, and talk to a lawyer you can trust, that you're comfortable with. Sam & Ash Injury Law is a firm I started. It's been 6 years and running. We've been doing phenomenally well here in Las Vegas, office in California, cases around the country. 800-304-2000. The Sam & Ash difference is we're user-friendly, easy to talk to. And the results, we get the results. Just looking at a case the other day, came to us, the client had an offer, $1,200, and asked us, should I take it? And it was a relatively small case, right? Settle it for $50,000. Even after attorney's fees, right? This is what I say, even after attorney's fees, you're getting 10x, 20x. In this person's case, 25x of what they were offered directly by the insurance company. So just, be smart. Make sure you are treated well. And don't get caught up in all the nonsense dealing with all the paperwork. Just don't do that. 800-304-2000. No recovery, no fee, no money up front. samandashlaw.com, because you deserve what's right. Some updates from Hungary, people talking about this. I think everybody's got the wrong take here. If you're tuning in to the mainstream media, they will present the situation in Hungary as a right-wing politician was defeated by a center globalist, mainstream, politician type, reverting the country back to normalcy. The kind of thing that we need to see, everybody will say in hushed tones, the kind of thing that we need to see happen in the United States of America. We got to get away from Trump. And it's all wishful thinking. And it's I think, my assessment here of this Peter Magyar guy, who is the new prime minister, is that he's actually a right-wing guy. He's come into office and he's not so far, okay? He's taking a sledgehammer to Orban's party and his party establishment, which he believes is responsible for extensive cronyism in Hungary. I was talking to my father about this, and I think he's very studied in these matters, and there's a lot of people there, young people, bright young people, leaving Hungary and going elsewhere in Europe, going to the U.S., going to Asia, because it simply couldn't earn a livable wage. And Orban's government, while correct on a number of very important issues like immigration, did a lot to concentrate wealth in the hands of a few that were politically connected. I read somewhere that there was a charity that was operated by some friends of Viktor Orban, and he transferred 10% of an energy company free to this charity, obviously enriching people in his circle. So the news yesterday from Hungary was that the prime minister went to the president. The president, has to officially, swear him in. The president is elected, and he was an ally of Orban's, and basically told him that he's not the new prime minister. Comes in and says, "Yeah, you're not fit for office. We're going to get rid of you." Now, my take on this is, of course, it's funny because the globalists are really pushing this anti-Orban guy. The anti-Orban guy used to be in Viktor Orban's party. He has a lot of the same opinions. He wants to see free market reforms and an opening of the Hungarian economy, which of course is a good thing. We'll see how he is on immigration and other important issues. But they're desperate to make this globalist out of him. You had Alex Soros up there going, this is great news for Hungary. I don't know if it's going to be great news for Alex Soros. It might be great news for Hungary. Soros may, for once in his life, actually be correct. But it's not because Alex Soros knows what's going on. This little Nepo baby troll, you know, what does he look like to you, by the way? How do you describe, if you haven't seen Alex Soros, how do you describe him? He looks sickly, right? Speaking of Europe, sometimes have you ever been to an old museum? For those of you who've been to Europe, you go to a museum or an old palace somewhere, right? And they got the oil paintings and they got the royalty there, right? The paintings of the royalty. And the royalty, they've all had, children with their first cousins. And I'm not going to be trying to be rude about this, okay, but it went on for generations. They just, a lot of incest, all right? Not incest, but inbreeding. And so gradually over time, these people started to look deformed that even a flattering portrait by an exquisite contemporary painter from the period is unable to hide the grotesque disfigurement of the person. That's what I think of when I think of Alex Soros. Anyway, so he just is this weaselly guy, and he's just not smart. Like you can think George Soros is a terrible, despicable person, and he has no business being in America, which I agree with, but he's a wickedly smart individual. His son, not so much. Anyway, it's funny. Let's see how it goes. Because, folks, what happens in Europe, let me tell you another thing here about us, about America first. In Europe, there's two kinds of politicians, and one is a majority group and one is a minority group. I'll first describe to you the majority group, the larger group, and it's a big group. These are people who would rather turn to Brussels, which is the seat of the EU, the European Union, which is, I don't think of it like the Mecca of globalists. It's the globalist Shangri-La. It's technocratic, bureaucrats, politicians. You don't even know their names or their, and they regulate everything in sight, and they look to equity and environmentalism, net zero, and all the stuff, all the words and ideas, quote unquote ideas that the left has. It's all there. It's all in Brussels. So the majority of European politicians look to Brussels, and if they're looking any further than Brussels, they're looking to Beijing. I'm not kidding. That is a majority of Europeans, and that is the most stupid, honest to goodness orientation you could possibly have. There is no future in Brussels and in the EU in its present form whatsoever. Now I'm going to go to the minority group. The minority group of European politicians, and I'll include in this, influencers of idea people and writers and thinkers. Minority of them look to Washington and look to America. And these are the people that love when America is America first, because America, and the way I've always presented this or perceived this is that America first means is that we deal exclusively in American interests. And when America deals in American interest, free countries around the world who want to trade with us and want to do business with us, they all benefit. It's a rising tide, and it lifts all boats, not just the ones that are stuck at the entrance in the Strait of Hormuz there. So they get it. They understand that if America is weak, China takes over. And if China takes over, or gosh forbid, we get into the territory of that one pinko communist China professor who Tucker Carlson interviewed, who said, well, we need to do a multipolar world where the Iranians are a superpower. Guffaw. So stupid. I can't even help myself. Remember the guy? What was the guy's name? It was an unpronounceable first name. I think, was it Yi Jiang? Well, that's his last name, right? So it comes first. It's his family name, I think. But okay, it's the Jiang guy. Well, and Tucker interviewed him. Nice. Telling you, the smart people in Europe understand that a strong America is their only hope. And why? Because ever since World War II, where American influence landed and stayed, freedom and prosperity reigned. And everywhere where the Soviets or any other nefarious group of individuals exercised their influence, it all went to hell in a handbasket. There's a long tradition of American, now the left calls it, by the way, I call it American influence. The left calls it imperialism. It's a bad word. American imperialism. American influence is tremendous, but it can't be the kind of influence that the Obamas want. And this is, by the way, what takes me to America First, right? The influence that Obama wants to wield around the world is via NGOs, color revolutions, meddling in everybody's affairs, giving away hundreds of billions of dollars for stupid stuff that ultimately only serves to enrich a handful of politically connected insiders. That's what Obama-style globalism is. And when Republicans come into office, they talk a big talk against this. They get into office and they do the George W. Bush thing, which is do more, basically do everything that the Democrat did and then some. And just keeps getting worse and worse. And hence, those budget line items keep ballooning. But it benefits a people around them in those countries, allies of theirs politically, not necessarily allies of the U.S. and of U.S. ideals, but allies of the globalists around the world. How many of these people that have managed to come to power and destroy their countries have been aided and abetted by U.S. tax dollars? Many. So America First is not us going around and buying everybody's, lunch. America First is we're strong, we're the world's superpower, we are the ones not to be trifled with, and everybody go back to your corners and let's go trade, let's do business, let's agree to stay out of each other's lanes, and everything's going to be hunky-dory. And we come down like a hammer on anyone that gets out of line or that's an actual threat, because I don't know about you, I don't want to get nuked, here in the middle of Las Vegas. And, I'm pretty sure the Ayatollahs and mullahs are not going to spare Sin City when it comes to their chosen day of reckoning. It's just what I'm just, hear me out. So there it is. Now, Robbie, I have to mention this because yesterday was tax day. So first off, a lot of Democrats out there talking about how they're the low tax party. I was actually at one point, a bit of my drink percolated up through my nose. I was laughing so hard looking at my Twitter account. By the way, you can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at What's Right Sam. And along came a story that was not tax related. Something happened in South Korea, of all places. Now, South Korea right now is a horrible president, horrible government. They're a mess of a place, but it's not a political story per se. But it does have to do a little bit, tangentially at least, with American exceptionalism. It used to be once upon a time that Americans could travel around the world and had the American passport, and it meant something. And it meant something because of two things. Number one, America was respected, maybe even feared. And the other point is Americans behaved well, okay? They didn't go around the world, maybe a little naive, maybe a little, maybe had a, not the best French accent when they said s'il vous plaît, but they were nice. So there's this guy that got convicted yesterday and sentenced to, I think, 6 months in prison, hard labor. And his name is, this is his nom de guerre, another French words there, his pseudonym, Johnny Somali. Now, I don't actually know if he studied in a Leering Center. Robbie, do you know if he is from... Johnny Somali has been on my radar well before the Leering Center was. Just need you to know this. And do you know why? This is a guy who he's a YouTuber. He does live streams, so he does live, things where he basically first he traveled around Japan, and he was doing horrible things there, taunting people, playing racist songs, getting into fights with people on the subway. This is not what Japan does. And by the way, people did not react well to this, and I think there's a part of the reason why Japan has a very conservative, anti-immigrant new government is because people like Somali were acting very poorly in the country. So he gets kicked out of Japan. He goes to South Korea, where he begins his antics. Now, when I heard this guy went to South Korea, Robbie, he's not a bright guy. No. That's not. You don't know where I'm going. When he went to South Korea, I was disappointed that he didn't get lost and end up in North Korea. I really wanted this kid to Seoul, Pyongyang. He wouldn't have lasted a minute, but he lasted months in South Korea doing the stuff, taunting people, everything. Anyway, gets arrested. They hold him. They won't release him, and he convicted. Now, I tell you, he went to. I'll give you an example of what he did. In October of 2024. About a year and a half ago, he visited the Statue of Peace in Seoul. It's a memorial for Korean women forced into slavery during World War II. He was live streaming from there. He kissed the statue. He did a sexually suggestive dance against it. I'm not going to describe it. That's good enough. Sparking national outrage, right? And he'd do other stuff. He poured his soup out on people's tables, harassed workers, and he created deep fake pornography of women. This is a horrible, disgusting creature. So he gets arrested, and all throughout this, he thinks he's invincible. Here's a clip of him saying he's going to push these boundaries. Nothing's going to happen.
I'm going to show you guys how far I can push the boundaries, and I'm going to show you that the Korean government is not going to do anything to me because I'm an American citizen, A. And B, the Korean legal system is not as strong as people think and perceive it to be.
I'm an American, A. B, the system isn't as strong as people perceive it to be. Okay. And then he actually said he thinks that Korea ought to apologize to him. Listen to this.
You guys think you could win a war against a little midget black man, a little green goblin, a little gold goblin, actually, from Diablo 4. You guys lost to so many countries in the past. So you guys think you can win against me? You're not going to win against me. So I am a very formidable enemy. So it's better for you Koreans to apologize to me. Instead of me apologizing to you, you Koreans should apologize to me.
I have never, in all the circumstances where Americans have been held and been arrested, taken into custody by foreign powers, I tend to be very protective of American interests, and believe that people who hold our passport and this country's passport ought to have protection from our embassies. I hope that Trump's ambassador to South Korea actually goes to court and requests the statutory maximum sentence, which my understanding he was given on the low end of sentencing guidelines. I literally hope Trump sends his ambassador and says, you know what, 6 months, keep him there for 5 years. Will you do me a favor? What an absolute creep. So, it goes, look, American might, what, by the way, people say, oh, Trump's done so much to damage our brand, so much. I bet this guy's a Democrat too. Delightful. Literally delightful. All right, folks, look, the situation in Iran is fluid. Everything's fluid. California right now is up in the air. It matters because, I'll tell you this, I'll bring this back. I really still believe that Trump is advancing logically and systematically when it comes to Iran. a lot of the criticisms, and tomorrow we'll talk more about the Pope. I want to get into that because I think that the criticism that Trump has garnered on that actually is misplaced. And I'll explain this fully. I'll get into it Friday. But look, the California race for governor on the Democratic side is going to be a referendum on where the Democratic Party is headed. Is it going to go back to the party of Bill Clinton, or is it going to go the way of radicalism? Abolish the police, anti-ICE, tax everything in sight. That's an interesting thing. So that's why we need to watch it, because, happens to be that occasionally a guy from California wants to and even becomes president. Sam Murjovsky here on the What's Right Media Network, Sam at what'srightshow.com, at What's Right Sam on X. I'll see you tomorrow.